Chanukah is such a fascinating yontif. It's yontif. It's actually the closest yontif, historically speaking, to where we are today. Meaning to say, all the other Yom Tovim that happened, Shul Shregulam, Shuni Yom Kippur, then we had Purim, historically speaking, then we had Chanukah, and the next yontif after Chanukah is Mashiach Tzidkayni. So Chanukah is actually the closest yontif to us in the number of years that have passed since from the Yom Tovim that we celebrate every year. It's a yontif, a full-fledged yontif, 8 days long. Everyone knows during the winter time, there's a long period of time from when Sukkot finishes all the way till 6 months later. When Pesach comes, okay, we'll give Purim a month earlier. But there's that long winter zman, that long time of winter. And Chanukah comes smack in the middle of it and lights up the winter, the dark winter nights. Many people have a minig during Chanukah Lech, they wear their regular weekday clothes. Others have a minig to wear their Shabbos clothes. Others have a minig to wear half and half. I've seen people who wear a bekesha and a hat, even though Shabbos they would wear a shtreimel, and during the week they wouldn't wear a bekesha. But still, in Chanukah, it's kind of like 50-50, somewhere in the middle. They wear a bekesha, which is Shabbosdik, and yet they wear their hat, which is their weekday hat. Chanukah, what are we celebrating exactly? Are we celebrating the nest that we all know about? That the oil that should have lasted for only 1 day or less than 1 day, there's lots of different reasons. The famous B'siyasas Kasha with so many answers as to why we celebrate 8 days. One of those answers is because since the menorah was tumah, they had to use a menorah made out of cheres. And since they used a menorah which was made out of earthenware, made out of clay, which absorbs, therefore, the same amount of oil that would usually work in the golden menorah, more would be needed even for a single day, because the menorah itself, in this case, was not made out of gold, and it absorbed some of that oil. And that's the reason for the extra day. Again, there's tons of reasons, tons of answers to the B'siyasas Kasha, and this particular Shmis is not about that. But there's still something very interesting about how sometimes we talk about how we're celebrating the Nes of the Pach Shel Shemen. We found a little jug of oil that burnt for 8 days until they were able to bring new oil. And during Al Nissim, when we say Al Nissim, we mention the fact that the Yidden won over the Yevunim and were able to continue the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash and were able to win and know that the Chachma of the Heilige Torah is the winner and not the way some of the Misyavnim had been misled to that the Greek way is the right way to live a life, maybe with some religion or some religious type of imagery mixed in, but knowing that the Greek ideal is the ideal. So Chanukah is the celebration of the Yidden having won. As we say in Al Nissim. So what are we celebrating? Are we celebrating the victory which we talk about in Al Nissim? Or is the main point of the Chanukah celebration, the Yontif of Chanukah, the fact that we found the Pach Shel Shemen, the jug of oil? Interestingly, Chanukah is a yontif which is 8 days long. There is no other yontif really which is 8 days long. It's true that in Chitz Le'uretz, Yom Tovim are longer by a day than in Eretz Yisrael. But in Eretz Yisrael, you have the yontif of Pesach, which is 7 days. You have the yontif of Sukkot, which, if you count Simchas Torah, is obviously longer. Shmini Atzei Simchas Torah is obviously longer. But still, to have the yontif of Chanukah, which we could have made do with a party, or a Rosh Chodesh type of idea, is 8 days long. Not only it's 8 days long, but it actually is the only yontif that we have that cuts through from one Chodesh to another. Rosh Hashanah is in Chodesh Tishre. Yom Kippur is in Chodesh Tishre. Sukkot is in Chodesh Tishre. Pesach is in Chodesh Nisan. Every yontif, even if it's long, sits within a specific month. The only yontif that we have that breaks that mold is Chanukah, which starts at the end of the month of Kislev and rolls into the month of Taivus, which is something interesting in its own right, as far as Chanukah being something unique, something special, something different than the other Yom Tovim that we have. Chanukah also, we see something very interesting. There's multiple levels of Hiddur. Is it Ner Ishi Baisoi? Is it one lecht added or subtracted B'Shamai Beis Hillel for each night of Hanukkah? Is it one person lighting in the house? Is it everyone lighting in the house? We see how many different levels there are. Do we light with candles? Do we light with oil? Do we light with olive oil? What level of olive oil? We see that by the Yontif of Hanukkah, there are multiple levels of Mahadrin and Mahadrin Min Mahadrin. Why is this so? Why is Hanukkah so unique in so many different ways than all the other Yom Tovim that we have? The Medrash says that the Chanikas HaMishkan was supposed to be on Chuf Hai Kislev, on Hanukkah, the first day of Hanukkah, but it was pushed off, so it should not be on Chuf Hai Kislev. Instead, it should be on the day that Yitzchak Avinu was born, and the Chanikas HaMishkan was pushed off from Chuf Hai Hanukkah until Yitzchak was born, till the day Yitzchak was born, in order so that the Chanukah of the Mishkan should have the schis of Yitzchak Avinu, being on the day he was born. Oy bazoi, the Medrash says, turns out that Chuf Hai Kislev gave up something, it lost something, it should have had something special on its day, and it gave it up in order so that the Mishkan should be, the Chanukah Mishkan should be on the day that Yitzchak was born. So the Medrash says that in exchange for that, the Chanukah Habayis of the Beis Hamikdash, not of the Mishkan, but of the Beis Hamikdash, was given over to Chuf Hai Kislev, to the first day of Hanukkah, which is taka why Hanukkah also, one of the reasons we say Mizmor Shi Chanukah Habayis LeDavid, one of the reasons we line what we line, because of Chanukah HaMizbayach and the connection between the Mizbayach, the Chanukah HaMishkan, and the Chanukah HaMizbayach, and the Yontif of Hanukkah. The word Chanukah also, Chuni Chuf Hai, Ches Nin Vuv Chuf Hai, is also the letters Koyain Ches. So Chanukah is the letters Koyain Ches, which has a very beautiful meaning and a particular pshat which I appreciate, which is that when all the Nesiim brought a matuna for the Mishkan, Aaron felt bad. He felt that everyone brought something besides him. He was the Nusi of Shaivat Levi. And the Eibishter told him, Gudel shelchu mishalahem, what you do is more than what they do. It's a greater level than what they do. Why? Because you will have the menorah, you will light the menorah, and lighting the menorah is actually even greater than the matuna than the other Nesiim brought. Now, it's true that what the other Nesiim brought was a one-time gift, and the matuna that Aaron had to light the menorah was something that was done on a daily basis. But it says in Sfurim that not only is it true that Aaron HaKohen had it, and not only Aaron HaKohen had it, but his Eluzah had it, and from Kohen Gudel to Kohen Gudel it was passed on. But even more so, today, even in this generation, these generations where there is no Beis Hamikdash, where there is no menorah being lit every day, our lighting the Chanukah menorah actually stands in the place of the menorah of the Beis Hamikdash. And that when we light the Chanukah menorah, what we're actually doing is we are further doing the avodah of a Aaron HaKohen, of the Kohen Gudel, because we are making the lechtigkeit of tzinding the menorah and the kavunas, the whole inyan of menorah, even through these dark days of gulas, which we will keep on doing in Mitzvah until Mashiach comes and the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash is lit anew. So Chanukah, being the Rishon Taivis, Kohen Ches, is a very appropriate Rishon Taivis, a very appropriate gematria, essentially, same letters, mamish, that each and every one of us who lights the menorah and celebrates Chanukah is being Kohen Ches, is being a Kohen as in the Beis Hamikdash for those 8 days of Chanukah, and that is one of the reasons that it says that a person who's mispal on Chanukah, every night of Chanukah, and looking at the left of the actual flames of the menorah while it's burning, and especially on Zois Chanukah, which is the Ches, the last day of Chanukah, the final day of Chanukah, can actually ask Hashem for anything they want and have their tefillah be granted because of the power of these days of Chanukah, which works very nicely with the idea of Chanukah being Kohen Ches. The Maharal says that really the Yontif of Chanukah is celebrating, surprise, surprise, should be celebrating rather, the military victory. It says, I think from the Vilna Gaon, if I remember correctly, that every week he would say a Dvar Torah on the Parsha. So he would say every week it's very easy to say a Dvar Torah because you always have in every Parsha you have the good guy and the bad guy. You have Yankiv and Esav, Yitzchak and Yishmuel. In every Parsha you have somebody good and somebody bad. And it's very easy to paint the good guy, the person, a good guy, the tzaddik in the weekly seder as being the tzaddik, and explaining him as a tzaddik. And Mashenkin on the other side, the Rusha is a Rusha, and it makes it very easy to speak because you have somebody good and somebody not good, and you can compare them to each other. He said, when you get to the end of Bereshis, Chanukah time, Parshas Vayeshev, he says, everybody's good. What do we understand in Yosef HaTzadik and the brothers? What do we understand in their Madregas? It's not like we learned in first, second, and third grade that Yosef was a tzaddik and did something wrong and they were, I don't even want to say that in my mouth, but the idea of some being good and some being not good, the Vilna Gaon said, doesn't work anymore when you get to the end of Parshas, the end of Chimish Bereshis, the Parshas Vayeshev, because everybody's good. So, the Maharal says, really we should be celebrating the military victory. What's the problem with celebrating the military victory? First of all, Chanukah is not just the Yidden against Goyim. So we say good guy, not good guy, so on and so forth. Chanukah time we actually have an issue that Misyavnim were Yidden who were a little bit, let's call it, acting not so Haimish. They were kind of influenced by the Greek culture. They were influenced by everything going on around them. And there is a Chachmas Yevunas, which Chazal even said at a certain period that a person who teaches his son Chachmas Yevunas is not gebenched. But still, the fact that Yuvon was given Chachma is only V'yishkan b'holei Shem if he in fact understands that the main thing is Yiddishkeit and the Chachma Yevunas, the wisdom, the math, everything that Yuvon has to offer is only valuable when it's looked at through the right perspective and through the framework of what was given, V'yishkan b'holei Shem, to what Yiddishkeit is all about. So the Maharal says that were we to celebrate the military victory, we would think that we're celebrating a military victory, and okay, so every time there's a military victory, we don't celebrate. I'm saying not every military victory is worthy of celebration, especially if it's going to make us forget what really happened. If a person forgets that it wasn't just there was good guys and bad guys and the good guys won, it wasn't just that we look at it and say, okay, so Hashem made a nes, and there were a few people who were tzaddikim and they won the Rishurim, because that might lead a person down a path of thinking that our strength, the Yidden strength, is in military victory. It might lead people to think that we should tighten up our muscles and learn how to shoot guns very, very well, become expert marksmen and sharpshooters, and that way we'll have victory. So the Maharal says that therefore we have to focus the nes on the Pach Shel Sheman to remember that what we're celebrating is a nes, and to make sure the celebration, and this is ironic, that in the non-Orthodox world, even among Jews who are not yet connected to their heritage, Chanukah is a very important yontif. It's true, it takes place in the Goyish calendar month of December, which is a time when the Goyim have a Chaga of their own. And it's quite convenient to have a Chaga Meaning to say, when someone in the secular world who's not yet connected to Judaism has a celebration the same time that their non-Jewish neighbor has their celebration, so like, oh, you celebrate yours, I celebrate mine. Goyim have a tradition of theirs to give gifts. The Yiddish tradition is actually to give Chanukah gelt and not Chanukah gifts. Important thing to be aware of. But it's interesting that the Yontif of Chanukah is so widely celebrated, well beyond the frum world, when the entire celebration of Chanukah is celebrating Jews being true to their ideals and not giving up the Heilige Torah and not giving up the Avodah in Beis HaMikdash, and making sure that we continue to worship the Eibishter, to deen the Eibishter, to follow the Torah in the way that we're supposed to, without outside influences influencing the way we act and what we do. Chanukah being 8 days also lends itself very nicely to the three things that the Yevunim wanted to get rid of: Shabbos, Chodesh, and Milah. Because it's 8 days long, it always has a Shabbos in it. Because it's 8 days long, there's always a Rosh Chodesh in it, meaning it starts Chof Hai, and as we said before, it runs into the month of Taivas very uniquely, which means it covers a Rosh Chodesh, which is one of the things that the Yevunim wanted to eliminate. And the third thing is, it's 8 days long, which is a simon of the days of a bris. And if a baby is born, even on Chanukah, the first day of Chanukah, he can still have his bris on Chanukah itself, being on the last day of Chanukah, on Zos Chanukah. The B'nai Sasra brings down the Medrash Talpias that Mashiach is Ushetayvus, Mem Shin Yud Ches, is Madlikem Shmoinas Yemai Chanukah, which is also a very good hint to what we discussed earlier about the fact that this is the closest yontif we have to historically speaking, from when Hashem created the world until today, it being the final yontif of the series of Yom Tovim, that the Chachumim essentially then lacked the calendar and said, okay, you have the Yom Tovim Deraisa, you have first Purim historically, then Chanukah, and the next thing is when Mashiach comes, we'll have new things to celebrate. But the Madlikim Shmoinas Yemei Chanukah, being Gematria Mashiach, is a remes to the fact that these Lecht are the light, are the flame that will keep us going until Mashiach comes. Reb Shamshon Pincus says that there are many Yom Tovim throughout the year, as we discussed. You have Rosh Hashanah, you have Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah, person's a whole day in shul for many hours, blowing shofar. Yom Kippur, a person's like an angel, like a malach, in shul from sunrise to sundown. Who can eat? Who wants to eat? The famous word, Tisha B'Av, who can eat? Yom Kippur, who wants to eat? Sikkis, Lilav and Estrik, Simchas Torah, you have the Torah, you have Pesach, you have Shvius. He says, but all those Yom Tovim essentially teach you that there are holy days, there are very special spiritual days in which you are not your usual self. Shabbos and Yontif, as we said earlier, you can't do Melucha, there's all kind of restrictions, every Yontif has its own things, what you could do, what you can't do. But Chanukah teaches us something that none of the other Yom Tovim do. Chanukah, we light the Chanukah menorah. Many Surim bring down the idea that the Eibishter comes on Chanukah, he comes down to our level, Lamata Ma'asura Tfuchim, the level the menorah is supposed to be. And the idea that the Eibishter comes down to us on Chanukah, to our level, teaches us something special about Chanukah. Chanukah is not a yontif where Melucha is forbidden. Chanukah is not a yontif where it's any different than a weekday, other than the fact that we're lighting the Chanukah Lech. We say Hallel during davening, but ultimately, as far as what you're allowed to do and how we act, it's Lamaisa very weekday-ish. And Reb Shamshon Pincus says the reason for that is to teach us something which only Chanukah can teach us, which is it's not only about being heilig on Shabbos, on Yontif, it's not only about on Rosh Hashanah, I'm very careful to go to shul early and stay till the end of davening. Chanukah teaches us to bring the Kedisha of a Yontif into our everyday lives, where we are and what we do. One more thought. There's many Divrei Torah, as we said earlier, about B'S Yosef's Kasha, why the Yontif of Chanukah is 8 days, 7 days okay, to celebrate the oil lasting, but why the 8th day? I saw a pshat that if one is medayik in the Lushan, I don't have it in front of me, but if one is medayik in the Lushan, they found pach echad im choisumish l'koyin gudel. So two nikidis about this particular inyan, about why we have the 8th day of Chanukah, because they found one bottle of pure oil. The first one is the following. It doesn't say they found, again, different pshutim, they don't have to agree with each other. Aili va'aili. They found the pach shemen. How did they know that the pach shemen was kosher? So pushet pshat is pach im choisumish l'koyin gudel, because it had the way when you buy a bottle of whiskey in America, at least in most countries, there's like a stamp running over it, like a plumb of sorts, like a sticky, gluey stamp that makes sure that once you open it, you can tell the bottle was tampered with, which is something the tax authorities put on bottles to show that duty was paid on that particular bottle. And therefore, if we found a closed bottle of oil which had on it the seal, like a taped seal or was, a stamped seal of the kohen gadol, we know this bottle wasn't tampered with by the yevunim. So 2 points. Number one, there's an amazing vart that this particular pach of shemen was not shemen that was meant for the menorah, because the kohen gadol wasn't a mashgiach. The kohen gadol had his work cut out for him, Baruch Hashem, to be kohen gadol, and there was someone else who was in charge of making sure the oil gets pressed and the oil gets produced. And therefore, a bottle of oil usually did not have the seal of the kohen gadol. However, the kohen gadol, who used to be makriv his own korban being kohen gadol, his own minchas being kohen gadol, had bottles of oil which had his stamp on it because they were his bottles. So it wasn't a stamp, as I used to think, as I was given to understand, only that it was his hechsher, and that's why we knew it had an OU on it, it had the kohen gadol seal on it, and therefore we knew that the bottle of oil was a good bottle of oil and kosher. But it was a seal of the kohen gadol that it's his bottle of oil, it's his personal stamp. And that's why it had a stamp on it. And not only was that bottle used to rekindle the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, but imagine the kohen gadol that prepared his own oil, and one of those bottles went missing because it rolled away. And then that bottle of oil didn't roll away and then never be used, but that bottle of oil, because the kohen gadol went and did special and made sure that for his own karbunas, for his own mincha, he had the most mehididige oil, mahadrin mina mahadrin, the best oil he could have. That's why that oil was rui for the menorah, and that's why we actually had oil to light the menorah with, which means that this kohen gadol didn't only have he worked hard to make bottles of oil and one of the oils ran away, but instead he was zoiche at the end of the day. Nothing goes to waste. He was zoiche at the end of the day that his oil was used to be nischanach the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. The other pshat, another pshat I heard in Chosumash l'Kohen Gadol is the following. The Greeks were very into sports, very into wisdom, very into math, very into history. Now imagine the Greeks, they come to Eretz Yisrael, they come to the Beis HaMikdash, they defile the Beis HaMikdash. Wouldn't they want to send home some souvenirs? Wouldn't they be sending home whatever they could to memorialize the fact that they won, they got the Beis HaMikdash, they turned Judaism into Hellenistic Judaism? So, according to this pshat, when the Yevunim came into the Beis HaMikdash, imagine they would have found the actual seal of the Kohen Gadol, meaning the actual seal itself, the seal that you dip into wax and you smack it onto a letter or you smack it onto a bottle. The actual seal, not something that was sealed, but the seal itself, the great seal of England, the seal. So when it says they found pach echad shel shemen im chosumash l'kohen gadol, that they found one bottle of oil, and they found, meaning if you translate the Hebrew carefully, it's they found the bottle of oil, together with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, not they found the bottle stamped with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, but they found the bottle of oil alongside the seal of the Kohen Gadol. Pach shel shemen im choysom shel Kohen Gadol. So, but because they found the bottle of oil, according to this pshat, even though the bottle of oil didn't have any special siman on it, because the Kohen Gadol seal was right next to it, possibly because, like the first pshat we said, it was the Kohen Gadol's private bottle of oil. Therefore, they knew that there's no way the Greeks found this oil, because if they would have found this oil, they may or may not have tampered with this bottle of oil. But one thing's for sure, the seal of the Kohen Gadol would have made its way to some museum in Rome, in Greece. And that's how we know that this bottle of oil is untampered with, and that's what they were able to light the menorah with, and that is the Nes of Chanukah. Sometimes something needs to roll away from us, like the bottle of oil of the Kohen Gadol, or the Kohen Gadol losing his stamp. I'm sure it wasn't pleasant if one day he looked for his stamp of the Kohen Gadol, and it went missing. But ultimately, like the Yontif of Chanukah itself, which comes down to us in the dark days of winter, many people have what's called winter blues, and Chanukah comes in the middle of this long, long winter period. The year, it was mamish, when the Eibishter created the world, this was mamish, the middle of the winter, that year on the calendar, which is why every year we use Chof Hai as the day, Chof Hai Kislev as the day Chanukah starts. And knowing that the Yontif of Chanukah is meant to take us from the Nes Chanukah, when it happened, through the Gulas, until very soon Mashiach, and knowing that everything that we do, lighting the menorah, and everything that happens to us that we don't understand, such as losing perhaps, in the Kohen Gadol's instance, a seal or a bottle of oil, that's what takes us knowing we're doing what we have to do, b'siyata d'shmaya, and very soon, Eibishter Mashiach Tzidkayni, and we're able to relight the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash.